Hello everyone, welcome back to the book show. Today, today is a fascinating topic, but it is one which I can't really prove. But there's very strong rumors and there's very strong indications anyway that I might be right. But if I am right, of course, there will be dire consequences for a country known as South Africa. And everything seems to me to be heading towards color revolutions. Just the other day, I sat listening to some fellow and he spoke about 4 or 5 generals of the defense force, as well as police, senior officers, who started talking about what they think of the government and the corruption and things like that. And that is all indications that there's something very wrong. Now, for somebody from my age and my era, the idea of a coup d'etat from the South African military against the South African government duly elected by the masses, mostly in ignorance, in my opinion, might be wrong, of course, is that it's highly unlikely and totally unheard of. Even in the darkest days of apartheid, or just after apartheid, in that time between where Mr. Mandela took over and where F.W. de Klerk was still in charge, uh, even then there was a lot of rumors about this type of thing, but it never happened. And I think it never happened because of a fellow called Constant Viljoen, but I don't really want to go into that. At some stage, F.W. de Klerk was a former state president, dead now, thank God. He at some stage had a whole bunch of senior officers of the defense force removed. Basically, they were cashiered, they were told to go on pension, and it caused a lot of ill feeling, especially since I spoke to people who were closely involved with this, and they said that what happened was they took a report which was basically unsubstantiated and which wasn't proven, and they were still working on to get to a final product. And they took that report as they took it at face value and as God's honest truth, which of course intelligence is never. Nothing you hear from a human being can ever be God's honest truth, because everybody lies in that world. And so they took that as evidence of some kind of a coup d'etat coming from the army. I mean, that's bullshit. It says, you know what? If this, it's amazing when you hear some of the senior officers talking on legacy conversations. I especially think of General Bormann, a Special Forces commander, when they were talking about Magnus Malan on that video. He did mention, so in the background, it wasn't really the topic, but he did mention that the army declared that they were, or the defense was rather, they would be loyal to the nationalist government after the changes came. But the nationalist government never reached out to them. In fact, they were seen now as an embarrassment. And so a lot of ill feeling was created, but it's really, really unlikely for such a thing to happen, except that South Africa got itself into something which is called the Muslim Truce. And this is what I want to talk to you about. And as I say again, guys, I can't really prove this. If I could have gotten a senior intelligence officer on my show on Legacy Conversations to come and tell us about it, because we're fully aware of it and they do talk about it in private. And I've spoken to quite a few off the record who told me that my conclusions are not that far wrong. Then, well, as I say, they're not willing to talk, but I was willing to put it in my books, and I was so concerned about it that it's in literally a lot of the books. I would say virtually every one of those books talks about the Muslim Truce, but especially in codename OSTM, which is a book where I explain to you how you do a counterintelligence type of operation, investigation, that type of thing, counter-espionage, which is not our normal topic in the book. Normally we talk about counter-terrorism, not so much espionage itself, because espionage itself is extremely boring. Really, it's boring. All you need to do is you need to get an asset of a source somewhere, you meet with this fellow, and you debrief him, and then you write a report. He goes to the analyst put it together, then somebody clever go and brief the president, and from there on you just carry on and carry on. I mean, it's boring. But then, of course, you get your penetration agents, like in the book, and Lee Dawson would be one, who penetrated the South African Secret Service from the French Secret Service. That came out in codename BFO 565, but it is an open secret for the GMJ readers anyway. Now, the fact that I used the South African Secret Service as the parent unit is not to say that I actually worked for them. I was involved with them, I didn't work for them. There might be other things in the background, but that's fine. It's just also one of these things I just mentioned because it seems to me some people sadly are unable to read between the lines. They just don't always get what you say without saying it, which is disappointing. But I must also say, I would say a lot of the people, 90% plus, can really read what's an open secret. Anyway, to make a long story short, the Muslim truce, as far as we know, has to do with Mr. Mandela's policies on foreign affairs. In other words, what Mr. Mandela was doing is he was saying, look, our foreign policy is very simple. And it's based upon what did you do for us, that is now MK and the ANC and all the band organization, and the armed wing, which was flipping useless. But what did you do for us during our struggle years? And of course, if you're from the West in South Africa, apartheid South Africa anyway, and before, was always a very Western-orientated country. It was always very NATO-orientated. Its army, its equipment, you look at the calibers, like 155 millimeter cannons, things like that. There's an entire series, by the way, on the G5 cannon, which is coming out on Legacy Conversations. Don't miss it. And also, if you look at the training, the way they operate, their rank structure, everything is Western orientated, and the way they march. There's no goose stepping. It's not East Germany or the Soviet Union or anything like that. It's totally Western. You can take a South African platoon and put it in the British Army, and they'll be able to march as well as anybody else. Of course, there's going to be a lot of laughter now because many people don't rate the South Africans highly at all, but you know what? I disagree with you respectfully. Not going to go into that now. Point I'm making to you is South Africa was a very NATO-orientated country. And I spoke to very senior intelligence officers who said, yeah, every morning they would ensure that encoded machines like something like a improved Enigma would actually be linked up every morning to NATO headquarters in Brussels. So despite all the political shenanigans you saw in the background, South Africa was seen as this Western country fighting communism. And that's what many people don't understand. They see the war as against race, race against race. Well, of course, if you're an ignorant idiot, then you're sitting far away, or you're a liberal, which is also ignorance in motion, then yeah, you will think it is that simple, but it is not that simple. It wasn't that simple. It had to do with what was happening in the world as well. And communism and the red threat was actually very, very real. And there were, I have to say also, there were few of the black people because there were a lot of them. And if you go in a one man, one vote, well, we saw in Africa what happened to the North. All those countries just crashed. Many of them dissolved into civil wars. Facts can't get away from it. That's exactly what happened. And if you look where South Africa is today, almost a failed state, then sadly, once again, it's exactly what naysayers predicted actually happened, which is very sad for us who believed, who thought, well, let's see, let's give it a chance, let's see if it works. And sadly, my opinion these days is it didn't work. But because of this, and because of friends like Mandela had, like Yasser Arafat and Gaddafi, it was the weirdest thing for us when we suddenly one day just saw, yes, all these people we consider to be terrorists, and the scum of the earth suddenly arrives, and they're so welcome. There's a red carpet for them, there's hugging, there's kissing on the cheeks. Man, it's just taxpayer money being wasted there, and we defending them, we protecting them as well. Now, if you read codename, I think Swan 53, we do go into Mr. Mandela's foreign policy and how that created the Muslim Truce. So with two books of interest, there's three of them actually. Well, it's a lot because, I don't discuss the subject in great detail in any of the books, but if you read several books, all the points come together, and that's the reason for this short video, and it will be short because there's not much to say about it. OSTM, that's the first one. Swan 53, yes. Wednesday 7, because that will explain to you how it works with how these jihadis from the Muslim faith, and there's very few of them actually, they use the Quran to justify what they are doing, which of course is totally nonsense. You cannot justify what they're doing. Not according to the Quran, not according to the principles of war, and then nothing else. Now, according to the theory, is after Mr. Mandela started this policy of Ubuntu, of saying that your friends is not my friends, and we will welcome whoever assisted us. That started including people like Arafat of the PLO and other what we would consider to be terrorist organizations, and they all were very welcome. And from there on came the Ubuntu principle. Now, Ubuntu is one of those things which says that if there's a stranger who comes to your kraal or your country or your house, you as the man or the leader of a house, the tribe, well, you've accepted this fellow, so as long as he behaves according to your rules and traditions, he would be welcome, and therefore you're supposed to protect him. Is this unique to Africa? Well, absolutely flippin' not. If you read that book, Lone Survivor, I believe, a very good book to read, where a SEAL team was basically wiped out in Afghanistan. There was one guy who survived, and he was on the run, which is a very specific meaning in special forces. And it's fascinating when you see all these series and things on special forces. They never really talk about being on the run, the training there, or anything like that. It's very, very basic. They just mention it and let it go. Why? Because it's so absolutely important. And that is where there's tricks of trade, which they don't want to come out. Now, one of them would be to actually become mates with your captures of the ones who's protecting you. If you saw my series on how to survive as a hostage in Sub-Saharan Africa, I think it's 7 hours long, 7 different episodes. Go and look at it if you want to. I will leave the links if I remember. Then you will see that one of the tactics which I say to you is if you're in the company of your guards and they're holding you there, and you realize they like Liverpool or Manchester United or whatever these football hooligan clubs are, then you become a bigger supporter there is, even if you are really a lifelong Chelsea fan or whatever. I don't watch soccer, guys. I've got no idea even what these people look like or what they do. But that's what you do. You try to become mates with these people. And if you read Lone Survivor, you will say he went as far as even becoming if I remember correctly, I speak on a correction. I read the book many years ago. But you can go as far as even to be interested in the Muslim faith or whatever faith they have, and to speak to them about that. Don't argue. What we've seen in Vietnam, North Vietnam, with shot down pilots, is some of them were trying to argue communism versus capitalism. It's going to end up with you being kicked 7 sorts of shite out of you. You're not going to convince a communist easily why it is wrong. It's the same with religion, I suppose. I'm not going to convince you about the Sabbath day or anything like that, or the mark of the beast. There's something which must happen inside you, which is from the Holy Spirit. It's not from me. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, here we go. In minute 15, Oath of Evil. Go and read that book. It might open your eyes to certain truths, and you'll be able to understand what's actually happening in the world. But anyway, so because of that, it seems to us that South Africa reached out to these extremist organizations and told them basically, you are welcome in South Africa where we have power. You can recuperate here, you can plan your operations here, but you don't attack us. If you attack us, we will destroy you. Now, South Africa has a military capacity to do that. And don't roll your eyes. Special forces are extremely good at this type of thing. And if you try a siege or you try a hostage situation, I assure you, the South African Police Service, Special Task Forces is really good, and they will take you on. But a lot of you will not agree with me. But the fact of the matter is, which struck me, is that it's very, very strange that since in the 90s, I'll go into detail now. I made some notes. There were not really a single terrorist, jihadi, Muslim type of attack of a serious nature in South Africa. Now, there were a couple of threats, yes, against the 2010 Soccer World Cup. Apparently, there was one which was intercepted. There were also a few guys who tried to bomb their own people at the mosque, but those were not terrorists in the sense of terrorism. And you have to understand also, look at the video where I speak about fundamentalism and radicalism, because it's important for you to understand the difference. But these attacks were isolated and they were not aimed at the government, at the overthrow of a government or to terrorize, but more like people disliking each other, more crime than anything else. Now, of course, all terrorism is a crime in a certain way. That's why it's a police function. But wherever police needs assistance, of course, the army will have to come and assist. Now, even that is a story, because in our own war up to about 1973, 74, it was the South African Police Force, not service, for its counterinsurgency units and security branch, which was like secret police, if you want to say that. But let me say something quickly about the security police. A lot of you, especially you Uitlanders, you people who have not grown up in South Africa, you're sitting on the side, you read a few Google articles, and now you think you're some kind of expert. Really, you're not. For us who are there, we were experts. So listen to what we have to say. That's why we even bother to speak in English here, or write in English. Normally we wouldn't even speak English in public. But anyway, to make a long story short, during the South African times of our apartheid struggle, there were a lot of people detained without detention, which is exactly what you people are doing in your rendition program. Yes, go and look at that episode and hang your head in shame. Because with the detention without trial in South Africa, these people were visited by a judge. They were subjected to the law, even if it was strange and perhaps not fair. They were subjected to the law. With the rendition program, they outside your laws. Why? By design. I'm not going to go into it. Look at that episode and understand why we think you people who always criticize us don't know what you're talking about. But it seems that in the 30 years between 1961, when South Africa became independent of that horrible island without sun, that's the UK for you, that failed country which has no army and a two-tier police system. Yeah, them. You know, the ones who committed the war crimes against my people, the Afrikaner, with the concentration camps during the Second Anglo-Boer War. Yeah, them. Yeah, they. Came independent of them, kicked the Queen on the ass, got out of the Commonwealth. In that sense, don't recognize the Queen, we still don't. Why countries like Australia and New Zealand is gatgabaing, that means ass licking after the royals? I wouldn't know. I just don't get such people. Don't like them either. Now, since then, and for 30 years, when this detention without trials were going on, about 65 people, 65 people died during police detention. Right. And about 90% of that 65 were due to natural causes. They were not tortured to death. They were not killed. They were not murdered. Yeah, some of them committed suicide, that's true. The question, legally speaking, of course, is would they have committed suicide if they were not in detention? Very good question. And remember, I'm a human rights lawyer, or I used to be. So yeah, I understand your point there as well. Point is, we're looking at about 65 people, deeply regrettable, should not have happened, but that's it. And where the policemen were actually found to be guilty of this, many of them actually ended up in jail themselves. So I know there's books written, I think, of Advocate George Bezos, who I really laughed at one day because I saw him walking down the hallways of the Supreme Court in those days, High Court today of Witwatersrand. And he was up against a guy called Von Leres, who was a prosecutor general, attorney general. And Von Leres was standing in front of him and he was snapping his fingers like this. Now, I cannot snap my fingers, but, if I could have, you know what I mean. And was saying to him, George, how many cases have you actually ever won in your life against me? Nothing. Nothing. And he was just biting him all the time. And Bezos was just, have you ever saw George Bezos in court? He didn't look like a smart man at all. But he was actually. It was just his act. He was a highly respected advocate, lawyer. He's deceased now. And he was one of these who, of course, defended all the apartheid struggle people. But let me tell you something about these attorneys and advocates and lawyers. They didn't do it for free. Most of them were paid extremely well by the World Council of Churches and other funding and so forth. So for them it was a gold mine, absolute gold mine. Now, point I'm trying to make it to you is 65 died here. Bezos wrote a book where he says no one guilty or something like that. Yes, he took one or two cases where people died in custody and it went to court because the court would investigate this. And if you think the court was on the side of the police, man, you're so ignorant. I don't have words for you. You're an idiot. You obviously haven't lived in those times. You obviously didn't serve in those times. You know nothing. We saw that the courts actually are our enemies. And I don't want to go into that as well. Read my books, The Mean Streets Police Theories or the Gewetenlose Strate. But the fact of the matter is he went and says, he wrote a book called something like that. I can't even remember the name. It's not worth reading, but if you want to, please go and do so. Back to 65 died, and there was judicial oversight. Now, as we sit here today, and this is August, I think, the 17th, 2025, I've heard yesterday the statistics in Gaza with Israel, people who died in detention of the Israeli army is something like 993. Is that true? I don't know. It's not my theater. I don't know. Point I'm trying to make is I don't hear anything being said in the West about that, but I do hear about detention without trial all the flippant time. But we won't, because this means that if there's like a type of a color revolution or a coup d'etat or something which takes place in South Africa on Western Israeli behalf, I guarantee you, if that does not succeed, I guarantee you if that thing fails, that even if it succeeds, you're going to have unrest and civil war and guerrilla warfare like you've never seen in your life. Take good note of that. The South African people are not really willing to sit down and to say, oh, this is okay, we'll just accept it. There might be a few idiots who actually like this idea. My friends, let me warn you, it will be 20 times worse for you, especially if you look like me. If you start thinking in terms of that, don't do it. Don't do it. Keep neutral here and keep away. But let's look at the Muslim truce. I already explained to you what it is, but let's look at the evidence. Let's see what we know about it. Now, since 1991, let me just say to you also, South Africa does have a large Muslim population, mostly Sunni Muslims. Now, why is that important? Because Sunni is not Shia. Shia is places like Iran. And virtually every single one, virtually all the terrorist organizations were attacked the West. That is places like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, all Sunni Muslims. Well, not Shia. That's why I keep on saying to you, Iran should be the natural ally of the West, and it's not. And I'm not going to explain to you again why this is. I look at a higher level, good, evil, and that's where I explain it. Read Oath of Evil, look at my videos on Oath of Evil. But then you will see what I'm talking about. I'm going to explain it to you again. So they are all Sunnis and they are militant in the sense that they don't like Israel. Not at all. Now, Israel is doing currently, and I say this with a lot of reluctance, everything wrong as far as you can do things wrong in war as well as in counterinsurgency, as well as in counterinsurrection. They just, as far as I'm concerned, screwing up bad. I'm tempted to use the F word. That's all they're doing. And because of that, they've lost all the respect of the Western world. I think even in a place like US, people under the age of 40 cannot stand that country. And it's going to have major repercussions. But we've seen this anti-West thing under the Muslim population in South Africa for a long time. In 1991, with the first Gulf War, there's a whole bunch of them who actually went to Baghdad because they were going to form this human chains around targets. Well, we didn't actually realize how the second beast of the Bible operates. The second beast of the Bible, of course, is the United States of America. Yes, the US of A. You don't believe me, read Oath of Evil or read Masamole 26 or do some research. And you'll find out the Bible talks about the dragon, which is Satan. It gives its power over to the first beast, the horrible little horn, the one who blasphemy all the time, the one who thinks he can change time. The church was dressed in scarlet and red, which is identified by the Protestants anyway as a Catholic system. Note please, I said the system. I did not say to you the Catholic individual, unless he's a Society of Jesus member, Jesuit, then he probably knows. And of course also the Antichrist, which is the papacy. And then you have a second beast, because this first beast would get a mortal wound in 1798, as he did. And then he would be restored politically, 1929 by Mussolini, as happened. But in between there would be a second beast coming out. The second beast is the US of A, and it would implement the will of the first beast, or of Satan, upon the rest of the world. Yeah, that's what the Protestant Bible actually says. I don't think lots of you know about this. If you don't know about it, please go to the links. Look at the series called Total Onslaught by Professor Walter Veith, or read Oath of Evil, or go and study your Bible. Or you can go to your closest Seventh-day Adventist church, and they will tell you these things in great detail as well. How do I know it? Because I'm a member. It took me 5 years to convert to them. Is it conversion as such? No, not really. That's the biggest Protestant church in the world. 22 million members worldwide, universities, hospitals, even here in Phuket where I live. I got a very good hospital, private hospital called Mission Hospital. That's where we go to if we feel ill, and we get treated very well, no problem. And it's fantastic to walk into it for two reasons. As far as it can be fantastic to walk into a hospital if you feel ill. Is first place, there's Bible verses right around you all the time. That's nice to see. And then secondly, if you walk into a cafeteria, they say, no meat allowed on this premises. Why? Yeah, no, that's a story by itself. Let me not go into that. The fact of the matter is, these guys, when they went to Baghdad, they did not realize that that's not going to stop the US Air Force to bomb the shit out of them. And they did. And so they were trying to protect, of course, Saddam Hussein, who we can speak about at a long time, because he used to be a CIA source and asset and so forth, and he was protected by them, and he was helped during the war against Iran. And during that war, by the way, we were smuggling F-14 parts and other aircraft parts to Iran. Let me think. It was Israel. Yeah, you know that? No, of course not. Do you know that Iran actually attacked the nuclear power plant of Iraq about 6 months before the Israelis did, and they did it with Israeli assistance? Do you know that? No, of course not. Probably not. When I say these things, guys, I don't mean it to you as a reader of my books or a follower and who actually likes my books. When I say these sarcastic remarks, it's against, mainstream media, things like that. Please don't misunderstand me. I had a friend the other day said, because of what you're going on, you're going to just chase people away, man. It's not my intention to do that, but you know what, I'm so fed up with people who don't know what they're talking about. When they sit there with serious faces and they sprout their shite, and perhaps I do know what they're talking about because I'm not so sure that they're actually innocent. But the fact of the matter is you need to know history if you want to read my books or to speak to me. So anyway, they were trying to protect Saddam Hussein. They came back, they were quite totally shaking, they were trembling with fear. They couldn't run for home quickly enough. But the fact is they made a stand. And we have to actually admire that because they then grew up and of course they became a little bit more radical. And then, you know, as the own people like Arafat and these people started arriving in South Africa, they got brave. This is just my theory, guys. Don't. As I said to you, this is not really something I can prove in a court of law, but it seems to be something happening. Now, South Africa theoretically never had really problems like in Northern Ireland with Roman Catholics against the Protestants, or Protestants and Catholics against the Muslims, or the black tribes with their African type of deities or whatever. There never was really such a religious thing. On the surface, below the surface, definitely, yeah, people did dislike each other. And again, if you go back to a higher level, you will find out that South Africa is a nominally Christian country, with of course being the target of Satan. That's not a ridiculous statement at all. It's totally logical. It's the same as Western Europe, which used to be Christian. Place like the UK British Empire used to be Protestant Christian. That's why they needed to be destroyed. That is why they were destroyed. And that is why you see the globalists and these people, World Economic Forum, all these, yeah, almost said the shit word, all of them there, you know, the new leaders, all those people. And what did these new leaders, all of them trained by the World Economic Forum, tell me what, when this terrible illness happened, which wasn't terrible at all, since less than 1%, or a percentage of 1% actually died of it. You know, the name which I cannot mention. That one, which was deliberate, by the way, as far as I'm concerned, wasn't an accident. Yeah, the laws are still in the books for a reason. Yeah. How did they deal with it? Looking at places like New Zealand now, Canada, oh, Canada, what happened to you? And, you know, other places where they went out, total lockdowns, total, complete. No, that's fascinating. But anyway, from that viewpoint, there were always this attack from Satan on their country. And there's a lot of people who would say that the moment we became rich and powerful, we forgot about God, we forgot about our promises. We of course, went to church on Sundays, we still do, or you do, I don't, which is the mark of the beast. But again, if you go to Hope of Evil, those things I explained to you in great detail. Now, that makes South Africa a logical target, but now things have become even worse because South Africa now is officially one of the countries with Cuba and Venezuela and other countries who virtually always vote against the US. Now, on one hand, that is, of course, I suppose, a good thing because the US ain't right. It's the second beast of the Bible. But at the same time, the US is a very powerful country. Even if it has a shit military, it doesn't matter. It's big and it's powerful and it enjoys a lot of influence. And they know now as anti-America. We saw this with the Trump administration coming out and talking about BEE, which is black empowerment. It's basically reverse discrimination. It's what it comes down to. I don't agree with it at all. It is basically affirmative action, which means that a white person cannot obtain certain positions. It's not possible by law. They try to promote those who were previously disadvantaged, who's been not been disadvantaged for the last 20 years. They stole themselves rich. And it's like always the common man who's suffering. And there's not a single country in the world, I dare any of you damn liberals who are watching here, to show me where affirmative action ever worked. And I dare all of you, you idiots out there, to tell me where in the world have you seen affirmative action or reverse discrimination against the smallest of the populations and it worked. No, it doesn't work. Never worked before, will not work now. And that is why the country is in ruins, and it is in ruins. But the fact of the matter is, whether it's in ruins or not, it's a BRICS country, and you have to listen to my episode on BRICS to understand what I'm talking about. That is a major point here. It is extremely important. But it is now annoying the US. Then it went even further, and it went to this court case against Israel, which is actually won at the International Criminal Court for Justice. And it won, and Israel is now seen as a genocidal country. And also, I think this Bibi or whatever his name is, I always forget his name because I know his Polish name. You know, I don't really know his Israeli name, Netanyahu or whatever. Yeah, he's wanted as a war criminal now. It's fascinating to me. Just 2-3 days ago, there was a meeting between Trump and Putin in Alaska. Yes. And of course, the Western media went insane. Why didn't the US arrest Putin? He's wanted by the criminal court. Yeah, on fake charges, by the way. Yeah, but you see, America is not a signatory to a Rome Treaty, so they don't have to arrest him, idiot. Therefore, they can't. And by the way, if you try to arrest Vladimir Putin, yeah, good luck. Good luck with that. It's as good as I try to arrest your own war criminals, which is every US president from about Eisenhower onwards, every single one of them. How many countries did you bomb illegally again? It's called murder, by the way, on the decent people. Air piracy too. Do you know that? Of course not. Let me not go into that. You're an idiot. You don't get that. And it's also very interesting with ICJ, and I speak about them in great detail in Codename Dawn. Go and read it. Where you will find out that the US has a policy that should any of these, a US citizen or US official, be actually arrested by them, not that they can do it, but let's say a country do and does that and hand them over, you will find special forces raids into the Hague, Den Haag, into a fellow NATO country to rescue their own people from a criminal court. Wow. Fascinating, huh? Fascinating. Doesn't this come down to one law for you and all for me? Rules-based order? Yeah, it comes down to that. Of course it does. Yeah, we see through you. Let me tell you, if you sit on the sidelines like we do, and we look into this rubbish or what's going on in the West, man, we see so through you, it's just amazing. But you can't. Many of you probably would be extremely shocked at what I'm saying to you, but please go and research. Don't just take my word. I always say this to you. Please go and research. But anyway, if Putin would arrive in, say, in the Hague or somewhere in Western Europe, in a NATO country, yeah, I will try to arrest him. We'll start a war, which they will lose because they don't have militaries left. But they will try that. But funny enough, when this Netanyahu and this other one, there were two of them, I think the Minister of Defense or something. Funny enough, when he arrives, even if I signatories to this Rome Treaty, nothing happens. No. Don't arrest him. No. Why? Tell me. From a legal viewpoint, tell me why. Why not? How can you justify that? Is the law not for everyone? Is everyone not equal under the law? No, of course not. No. Some pigs are more equal. Sorry, I don't get it. I'm a colonial. What do I know? Anyway. So anyway, South Africa did that, and they will not be forgiven. And I fully expect the scholar revolution type of rubbish to happen in South Africa quite soon. I expect a lot of unrest, a lot of sanctions, a lot of problems. So they better juice up the counterintelligence, which up to now is actually quite sharp. The espionage service is very good. I know that. But counterintelligence has never been good. And they're actually shite. They were so bad that they had to be disbanded and placed under the espionage people in 2012 to change their name once again. I just can hope now it's 12 years later, 13 years later, that a new generation is there. They actually know what they're doing and they're getting assistance from the BRICS nations because alone they cannot cope, as far as I know. But anyway, if you drive down Johannesburg in the roads, or you're anywhere close where the Indian, or let's call it the Muslim populations are, you see all these big billboards. Basically, it's saying fuck Israel and free Palestine. So they feel very, very strong about that. And it's also so that they do send a lot of aid, and they also support financially. Now, that is from a population. Now, that is a big thing. Because if you want to make a war, or you want to feel very strongly about something, go and look at where the population stand. If they are interested in this type of thing or not, or they're totally disinterested. And that will also become policy. And I think it already actually is policy. And then the other thing which you should keep which you should keep in the back of your mind is that many of the Jew boys and Jewish girls in South Africa, we got a fairly big Jewish community who contributed a lot, great people. A lot of them actually served in the IDF, and a lot of them did serve in the IDF. And that is against the law in South Africa as well under the Mercenary Act. There are people who want to disagree with me. I don't care. Fact of the matter is, it's a matter of time before these people are going to get arrested. And it doesn't matter really to the government whether they are found guilty or innocent. Doesn't matter. Fact is, you have to defend yourself. To defend yourself is going to break you financially. Or you're going to run away, or something's going to happen to you in jail. Yeah, you'll be surprised. So there's that too. And of course, it causes a lot of resentment. Don't think that the IDF is actually admired in South Africa by people of my age and my background and my service. Yes, we fought a lot about the IDF. We had respect, professional respect. These days, a lot of people still do. But let me tell you, the majority thinks nothing of them. Don't rate them highly. I personally don't rate them highly at all. I think they're just effing up since the 7th October Yom Kippur attack. I think they're doing everything wrong, and I don't rate the intelligence agency ID either. Not at all. It comes out in my books, where you will find a lot of combined operations. So I have some personal experience when I'm talking about this. And then two things happened. There was a former Mossad agent who used to run around there. And of course, with the word former in this case, you don't really know how former it is. But he was sprouting his mouth off, and he was quietly told to take a hike and piss off and never come back or die. And he did. He did. Research a bit, you'll find the case, and then if you read codename Alphabet 32, which is revealing the best anti-tank missile in the world to you, the Mokapa, which means black mamba, which is a horrible snake. The Mokapa missile plans, the blueprints were actually stolen. No, not really stolen. They were sold on the open market as a spy type of thing. People were trying to make money. The white people involved, two went to jail, one committed suicide. And yes, he really did. He wasn't forced. They're out of jail now. I don't know what happened further, but there was a definitely Mossad link to it through a guy called Talyard or something like that. And then Mossad actually brought the plans back, and they tried to play the good guys. Guys, yes, we found this and we're giving it back to you. By that time, they sold it already to the US. It is well known that Israelis actually do that. I mean, Pollard, don't listen to any of the former CIA people like Larry Johnson and others. They will tell you about Pollard, who was a spy for Israel. Israel, by the way, is the agency of a country who spies the most against the US, and then perhaps China, and Russia is probably number 3 or 4. Israel is on the top. They even planted the Stingray listening devices, I think 2019 or 17, I can't remember, it's in my books, around the White House to listen in. Yeah, wouldn't believe it. It's amazing. I don't understand why we're doing it. Really, you shouldn't piss off your biggest benefactor. You know, that uncle you have who protects you? Yeah, you shouldn't do that, guys. Because if that uncle turns against you, you're gone. You're gone. And I have every reason in the book to think they are going to, and you're gone. That's what I see going to happen. But anyway, doesn't matter what I think. The fact of the matter is that they do these things, they do listen in. And they already sold these plans as they did with the Pollard. Pollard basically stole the nuclear codes and the nuclear, everything to do with that. They strategic things to do with nuclear, and they sold this to the Soviet Union. That's Israel. Yes, they did. And because of that, some Jews out of the Soviet Union could immigrate to Israel. They stayed a few days and then they passed off to New York. Where, of course, they are welcomed as refugees. Yes. Which means that they are assisted very, very well by the government to settle in. And yeah, it's fascinating once you start looking at these things. Then people start shouting anti-Semitic, and I don't try that shite with me. Really don't. Not going to explain again to you the books I wrote, as well as my wife, as well as my own background. So please don't do that. But the fact of the matter here, what I want to bring to you is that also played a role to have this anti-Israel feeling in South Africa. But in the 1990s, before all of this now, there were quite a few bomb explosions. I think about 9 of them were taking place in Cape Town, which has a very large Muslim community, in a place called Victoria and Alfred Waterfront. Now, if you're in Cape Town, you have to go there. You're going to pay through your neck. It's not worth to buy anything there, but just go and look at it. And it was fascinating, the pattern. We always have to look for a pattern, guys. That's the name of the game here. You look for a pattern, and the pattern was we were only attacking American type of places and interests. There was a gym which they attacked, and of course, by bomb, and this gym immediately changed its name. Remember, this is just after these guys got attacked there in Baghdad. There was an organization called PAGAT, the People Against Gangsterism and Drugs. And it was a product of apartheid more than anything else. It's got to do with the Cape Flats and people who were very fed up with drug dealers and crime and things like that, which is still to this very day totally, I wouldn't say out of control, but it's rife. It's rife in certain parts, especially now with corruption in the South African police service and the corruption in the courts and the corruption in the country. It's just corrupt. But anyway, to make a long story short, this started off as a thing against, as the name says, against gangsterism. But then they started taking the law into their own hands, and they started killing people. Now, you can sit here and you can say to me, look, yeah, well, it's not such a bad thing if you go and murder a drug dealer, man. Yeah, it might not be, but guys, please, there's laws. You're not supposed to do this. Now, you can say to me, what if the police don't act? Well, I don't know. I don't have answers. But I can tell you the Bible says, thou shalt not kill. And therefore, I will be against this type of idea. And any idea of vigilante type of is to me is just wrong. It's just wrong. It doesn't go well over. So yeah. But basically what they started to do it, and in 1996 they cornered a guy called Staggy and they burned him to death. And this was on TV and it was very, very shocking. Because remember, this is 2 years after Mr. Mandela took over. This is not something we were used to. But we got used to it. I can tell you there's more riots in South Africa now than there was ever during apartheid. It's fascinating. And yes, the police still kill them. It's amazing. It's amazing. Certain things just didn't change. But they enjoyed, Pagat enjoyed a lot of support, local support. People were really angry. As I said, the South African police force, which was of course seen as an instrument of terror by people like Mandela and his ilk, his people, were very, very effective. Very effective. And then came the police service, and yeah, well, let me not say anything more. But as they went on, Pagat and other organizations also now enter the fray. It's in the books. I don't want to mention too many names for obvious reasons. They started getting very political, and it seems that they changed. They became more radical. There was a place called, the Islamic group is called Qibla, or something like that, Qibla. I don't exactly know how to say that word, Qibla. And they started to see this as a greater fight against the West. In other words, against Christianity. Let's cut the chase. That is now Muhammad, the Prophet. If you read Codename Wednesday 7, we go into great detail. Then you will see that they would spread and they would enter a village and they would say, right, you either convert to Islam or we kill you. And so we did. And people did convert. And it grew and it grew and it grew. But if you read Oath of Evil, you will find me saying there's no difference between the Catholic Church, Catholic system, and Islam. Yeah, guys, I realize you're rolling your eyes here. What Koos? I'm not going to go into it, guys. Please look at Oath of Evil. You will find out why I say this, or look at that series of Walter Veith. You will find out even more. And you can also look at Codename GSSB 40, where we talk about Hegelian dialectic. You can look at Codename Wednesday 7, as well as Codename Swan 53. Look at these things. There's reasons why I put this in so many books. And if you look at the Eggbreaker series, that's book from Codename Puar Angelique, Codename Phoenix, Codename Lees, and Codename Dawson. That's the Eggbreaker series inside the Eggbreaker, inside the series, where I really go into what will happen, what's the logical consequences of what will happen to South Africa if this Muslim truce of him ever become known and people realize it and we now there. Because you might have an attempt to destabilize the country. Now, of course, you add, in the meantime, the other things I told you about, the criminal court case against Israel and so forth and so forth. I spoke about that briefly. Then you see South Africa is now seen through the eyes of these people, rightly or wrongly. It doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong. They seeing South Africa as an enemy state. Now, anyway, these bomb explosions were going on, and there was also a Muslim academic, I'm not going to mention his name, he's a brave guy, a doctor in philosophy or something. He spoke out and he said, guys, this is not right, this is nonsense. This was the year 2000. In other words, it's still a year away, I think, from 9/11. And so he spoke out and they started threatening that they're going to kill him. And so he had to flee. He fled to the US. He was welcomed there. It was almost unheard of, you know. It was always, we never thought that such things could happen in South Africa, but it did. It was happening, and of course you had now very much weakened police who would normally control these things and stop it before it happened, but the police wasn't there anymore. People like myself and many, many others, I think of our chaplain, Andre Willifeer, highly experienced policemen, they all started leaving. In the early 90s, later 90s, they left. And of course, those gaps had to be filled. And they were filled by lesser people who were not trained. And of course, when you put affirmative action in, then you put the corruption in. Yeah, so you had a formula for a major fuck up, and that's exactly what happened. That's why the South African Police Service today is not rated. It's seen as pathetic. And so your first line of defense was now broken, which means that these things were fostering, and they were fostering. And also your espionage service, your counterintelligence people were also in disarray. Same story. The best people left, and they started concentrating, working overseas rather. The best people went there. Why? Well, let me explain that to you. There's a huge difference between a guy working inside his own country and he's trying to catch a spy or a terrorist with a full backing of the army, the police, special forces, everything behind him. And if something happens to him, he can immediately get to a hospital, he can be treated, he can be rescued, whatever. Yeah, it's a certain type of fellow, more the police mentality, right? And then you have your spies. Now these people work, many of them are undercover, that is without diplomatic cover, they work as illegals, as they call it, in a different country. Now there you look at people who actually need to know what they're doing, they need to believe, they need to be well trained, and they definitely need to be fearless. But they need to be cautious as well, if you understand what I mean. So it's a very unique type of person. He might be able to, you know, do the Krav golfing, and if you're up, but he probably never will. He'll just turn around and walk away. That's the type of man you want. type of woman you want. And they went for the espionage branch, the Secret Service as such as it was called. And they were highly educated. They still are. They're very, very good. Read my books. And they operate in deep cover, or they operate somewhere. They go in and out of a country. They have legends, which might be a businessman, might be an attorney, might be whatever. And they're really good at that too. But then they have a secret life. And then you have those supporting them as well. Read my latest book, Codename Snake 606, and you will see how I describe the process of how these people can actually function. Remember, guys, I don't write a book because I have nothing else to do. I write a book because I want to depart some information for you, which I think is important. Which is why I will ask you, if you like what I'm saying to you, if you like my books, please spread the word. Tell people about it. It's not about money for me. I'm married well, thank God. But there are messages there which I really need, which I really think needs to be known, which needs to come out. And this Muslim truce which we're talking about is actually one of them, because it will open your eyes, it will make you think about things a bit more. But to be frank with you, over 50 people who might watch this video ever, not more than 10 of you would actually reach this stage. Most of you would have given up after 10 or 20 minutes. It's sad for me to see that, because, you know, it's important. This can actually save your life. But these type of people would, of course, be a much higher quality person than the one running around playing Catch Me a Spy in South Africa. The sad thing is that South Africa is actually the odd one out on this field, because the rest of the African, sub-Saharan African countries actually have very, very good counterintelligence people, simply because they have to. They don't want to have coup d'etats. They understand that concept. South Africa doesn't. You better learn and wake up quite quickly. And the other thing which came from this is South Africa's spy networks right across sub-Saharan Africa is substantial and very good. And it is there as a first warning against anything which the US, the second beast, and NATO is doing. Yeah, because it's a BRICS country. Huh? Hello? That means the intelligence goes where? Huh? Moscow? Huh? Beijing? Huh? Yes, yes. But let me ask you once again, all those Indian software engineers, they're in Silicon Valley. Yeah, the ones who didn't go back to India. Very strange that, because most of the PhDs in engineering and IT and these things at the Ivy League universities are from China, and all of them go back. That's why China is so far ahead, you can't compete, give up. But those engineers, those Indians who stayed behind, do you think they might be reporting back to their own people? You think it's possible? My friends, you're very silly if you don't think that. You really have to think that. And India being a BRICS country, first and foremost, yes, they already said they don't want the F-35 now after Trump started throwing his toys around with his stupid, what's he levy? Those things he levies, I can't even remember, tariffs, yeah, taxes. Do you know, I just read a report this morning. Apparently, fruit and vegetables in the US has gone up by 40% in about 3 months. But I know people in the US, people speak to me across the world. I'm actually quite likable, you wouldn't believe. And we confirm this. Yeah, thank you, Trump. Thank you, Trump. All you've done now is you've actually done the impossible. You've got China, Russia, and India together. What do you have? Let me think. Bunch of chihuahuas called NATO. I don't really have militaries. No, shame. When the US don't have a military, read American military might debunk and wake up. Go and listen what people like Colonel McGregor has to say. Yeah, we've been warning you so long, but you don't listen. But anyway, doesn't matter, guys. Let's get back to this Muslim truce story. Because there were bombs exploding, there were people being attacked. Then came 9/11, and then of course things just went from bad to worse. Yeah. But there were a lot of sympathy for 9/11 too from South Africa. Don't make a mistake. Not every Muslim you see is actually a radical. Please remember that. But then something very strange happened. Yes, in 2002, the bombings stopped. It stopped. Bing, bing, poof. If I could clap my fingers, I would do it. They stopped. Why? Why? Why, if you have such a large Muslim population, and you know they are very anti-America, they are very anti, I would call it Christianity. They don't say that. They say I'm wrong. It's not about Christianity to them. It's for them. They say they've been attacked and therefore they have to defend themselves. End of story. That's where it started. That is even what Bin Laden has said in his letter to the US. And it's true. If the US has not been meddling everywhere, but they would, of course, because they're the second beast. That's exactly what they would do. They would set up the Christians to be wiped out in the Middle East. If they succeed, yeah. Less than 1% are left. Where's the rest? Told you before, they are dead. They don't exist anymore. They're being murdered every day as we speak, as we sit here. Every 3 minutes, a Christian somewhere in the Middle East or somewhere in the world will be murdered for his faith. Do you know that? No. Read Oath of Evil. See what we've uncovered. And then look at the bigger pattern. And then you will see what's going on in the Middle East, a place where it's predicted that there will be a third world war. By who? Pike, Albert Pike. Rules and Dogma. The greatest Satanist who ever lived, predicted these things in his book. Yeah, and these writings. We know about this. I speak about this in Oath of Evil and other books. You have to understand the bigger picture. And then you have South Africa, who not only now is anti-West, it is also a place which are protecting these radicals. That's what the Muslim Truce is about. Let's look at it. It stopped. It suddenly stopped. It is very suspicious that it stopped. It should not have stopped. If these people are worked up like they are worked up, and they are angry as they are angry, and South Africa is still seen as a Christian nation, I don't know why, because they go to church on a Sunday, which is a mark of a beast. I'm not going to go into that, just trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Then they should be brothers, because they're all serving Satan, basically. But they don't see it like that. They don't see a Catholic or a Seventh-day Adventist like myself or some other whatever, NG Kerk, whatever there is. They don't see it like that, or Protestant or whatever. They don't see it like that. They see it as Christian and therefore you have to die. That is from the Jihadi viewpoint, right? Not all of them. I say that again. Understand the difference between a fundamentalist and a radical, because most people don't, including the US intelligence officers. I sat listening to them, and we're not going to that. But suddenly, these bomb explosions, which were starting about 96 and went on, 2002, it's gone. Bingo. So you want to tell me that we had such a fantastic police and such a fantastic counterintelligence people, both of whom I told you are shite, actually stopped this? That's unlikely, isn't it? It's really unlikely. It's very unlikely that we stopped it. So something else must have happened. And my belief is, and that is what I say to you, and I might be wrong, is that there was a truce. Now, historically, this happened before. In about 1968-69, there was a whole bunch of aircraft hijacked. I think it was the only time ever that El Al was hijacked. And there's a lot of things about El Al I can tell you about their security measures, but I won't. But it's top class after that. After that, it became something else. But they were hijacked, I think, by the PLO or one of these Palestine groups. And 4 or 5 of these aircraft were being flown to abandoned wartime British RAF base or runway. I think it was in Jordan. And these airplanes, the passengers were removed. They were so innocent in those days. And they blew these aircraft up. Right, 2 things came out of it. As I said, El Al became an airline with probably the best security in the world, which is triple from what any other airline is. And the other thing which happened is Swineland, Switzerland. Yeah, that country dislike so much. Go and look at my video called Police State Switzerland. Go and look at it. Please, have a look at it. You will learn things there. Go and read my books about the Jewish army. When and where does it end? Those two books, yeah. Go and look at them. Because and where does it end? I really go into detail about Switzerland and the Holocaust and the Jewish problem, as they called it, and that they cost 50,000, 50,000 Jews their lives. Yeah, why? Because now they arrived there at the frontier, they wanted to get into Switzerland, they fleeing the Nazis, they want to put them in death camps. But sadly, their passports weren't quite correct and their papers weren't quite correct, so what did the Swiss do? Yeah, what did the swine do? Tell me. Huh? If you're a flippant swine here, tell me, what did you do? We told them to piss off, then they're not welcome. No. So the Jews went back. They died. Yeah, Switzerland. That's what you did. The Jews were actually went into here. You're so proud of them. Did you treat them well? Huh? No. If you look at that movie of Dr. Who, that sexologist or whatever we call these people in New York. What does she say? Tell me. She says that she was refused to go to school. Why? She was 15, 16 years old and probably they wanted her barefoot and naked in the kitchen and pregnant. This, of course, is a flippant country in Europe which gave women a vote, I think, about 50 years after the rest of the women got it. I lived in Switzerland. Let me tell you, I lived there for 3 years. So when I say these horrible things about them, it's experience. It's based upon experience. Most of you, of course, won't believe me. But let me say something to you, my friend. Unless you actually lived in a place, don't even talk to me. Just because you visited it a few times and you think, oh, it's so pretty. Yeah, it is. God made a very beautiful country, but the inside became the Swiss, So, must I make my dumb Swiss expression again for you? I like doing it. That's what the Swiss look like when you talk to them about these things. I don't believe you. I can't believe you. They look down upon you because you're not Swiss, Of course. Well, anyway, doesn't matter. So the Swiss actually approached the PLO. This is known in the intelligence world. They approached them. And they said, look, we will pay you and we will wash your money for you. Of course, they put it in different words, but that's what it came down to. One of their cabinet ministers did that on condition that you don't attack Swiss Air again, because that's not good for business. Yeah, we'll even fly you around. And guess what? Swiss Air was never ever attacked by the Arab groups again. By chance, huh? By chance, huh? No, of course not. He's flipping stupid. It's not by chance. Guys, whenever there's a pattern followed, it's never by chance. There is no such thing as chance where there's a pattern. Then there's intent. Please remember that. If you're listening here and your husband is a drunk and he hits you now and then, and he has a mistress and he thinks of his secretary while you two are having sex on a Sunday afternoon in a prescribed position of the NG Kerk, that's a missionary position. Just joking. But there's a pattern here, guys. There's a pattern. If your wife suddenly stays out late and she smells of perfume, and suddenly she wants to have her hair done, and suddenly it's this, or suddenly you want to lose a lot of weight, yeah, and you're having a midlife crisis, man. Guys, when a pattern forms, you should listen to it. There's always an instinct in you which will tell you about it. So that's the two things which came from a 1969 thing. That Swiss Air actually made a deal with the terrorists. And by doing that, through their government, that is what they said in the intelligence community. They, of course, deny it, whatever. I don't care. That's what I think. So they, as we will say, nabewering, they did this. And so what prevented them, South Africa, from doing the same? What prevented them from going to these people and say, guys, we're not your enemies. Yeah, man, we are comrades actually. You know what? We worked together when we were still in our struggle years, don't you know? That you supported us and we supported you and we're supporting you now and we're running political interference for you. I tell you what we do. I tell you what we do. Yes, that was the conference, I believe. It took place in Dar es Salaam. Yeah, I know about it. Yeah, that's what I've heard. There was a prior one as well. Where was that? Let me think. In Saudi. Yes, I know about that too. So anyway, so they came to an agreement. You come to us. You can walk around here between us, amongst us, plan your operations, but don't try to attack us because I said to you, we will wipe you out. Don't do that. And guess what? Don't put your operations close to the coast because there might be a US or a Western Special Forces team coming from the water trying to grab you. Yeah, no, we'll protect you against that. Read the code name. What's that book called now? I actually have it here. Read code name 1 Alpha. In 1 Alpha, we work with, we deal with white slavery or human trafficking and the link to terrorism. And we go into great detail. But at the same time, in that book, we look at what will happen if a Western Special Forces team is on the loose in South Africa, and there we talk about a military team, something like the Navy SEALs or the SAS, trying to snatch somebody in the coastal regions and getting them back to the coast. And we had to then lower our standards considerably to have a pseudo force like that running there, see if we can capture it. Yeah, read the book, you'll be very interested or surprised at what happened there. And also, after this, in 2005, you will remember, came a London tube bomb explosions. Yes, a whole bunch of people died there. Yes. And then if you look on the internet, you will see that this was planned in southern Africa. Yes. And on the internet, I'll tell you, it was probably in Zambia. Yes. But as I said to you before in my books and in videos, it was planned in Fort Worth, South Africa. Yes. So you see now in 2002, the bombing stopped. 2005, an attack is planned from Portsburg in South Africa on the London Tube. 2010, there's a huge attack on the mall in Kenya, which is owned by Israeli ownership. That's where the Kenyan Special Forces and police showed the world how fucked up they really are. Yeah, we got the videos of you stealing everything blind. Hey, yeah, now we get that. It's also the first time that we know about in the West anyway, where the jihadis would actually corner you, capture you, and ask you questions about the Quran, and if you cannot answer, they kill you. They say the one behind that is actually the wife of one of the men who died in the London Tube bomb attacks, called Samantha Veith or something like that, British woman, white. And there are strong rumors that she planned this attack from South Africa, where? Portsburg, Laudium, around about there. The Yanks say, the Americans say they droned her, she's not with us anymore. As I say in my books, I doubt that. I think she's under South African protection somewhere. And if so, forget it. You won't get to her. You won't. You will never get through those teams. And then if you read codename, what is it, Bella Dawn, you will find out there was a horrible link between the far right wing and Muslim extremists, and there was a farm in the book, of course. No, it's fiction, of course, very close to the Zimbabwean border. And then there was a route coming through Dar es Salaam, Zimbabwe. Then these radicals are escorted through all the way to South Africa. At the border through this farm, they would be met by South African counterintelligence people. Then they would be driven and taken to safe houses where? Johannesburg, Fortsburg, round about there. Well, that's what the books say. You know, just a theory. Just a theory. So I say to you, I can't prove these things. But where there's a pattern and where there's a smoke, there's a damn fire. And we also know there were two, which I'm aware of, two Western intelligence teams in South Africa trying to do something about it. And they were intercepted. And guys, if I ever write book 55 in the GMJ series, I will write it about that operation. Yes, I'll do that, where they got it intercepted. And in the first place, the first time, they were politely told to fuck off and never come back. The second time, they were carried out on stretchers. I don't know if they came back, because you wouldn't know. Because if there was a third time, they would be dumped. Yeah, they would be captured, loaded on a trawler or some kind of vessel, a mothership, and interrogated. And then you know the sharks also have to eat. So there's a crocodile place I know about there in Mozambique. If I ever write a book again about it, I will write about that. But as I say to you, it might not be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God. It might be fiction, it might be just a theory, perhaps it is just a theory. But that's where we stand today. It is very interesting that the countries who are not part of a Muslim truce, there might be more. Go and see who's never attacked and who are attacked. And then you see two groups. And in the one group you see they're very friendly to the US of A and find their military there. And you have serious shite. Yes, Kenya? Yes, you're one of them. And then we had all these problems in Mozambique suddenly. But there you need to read codename VF0565. Yeah, you need to read about mosques and how we found this mosque. And you need to read codename Wednesday 7, as well as Swan 53. And a lot of these things will start to get together to you and you will understand. And if I say to you that the leader element of these people in Mozambique and other places does not look African, they look Middle Eastern, then I'm not lying to you. If I'm saying to you that the current theater of operations for Muslim jihadism in the world is not the Middle East. The Middle East is about murdering Christians, nothing else. It is in Sub-Saharan Africa. Yeah, that's where it's happening right now. And the more the US meddles, and the more the US and France and Germany and the British army, as more they get themselves involved, and the Israeli army, the more they get themselves involved, the more they fuck up, the more this explodes, the more this gets worse and worse. Do I need to put that slide to you out here again? Let me put this slide for you to show to you how much terrorism, jihadism has exploded in Sub-Saharan Africa. Why? Yeah, well, they are basically supported in a way by the West. But that's a subject for another day. Thank you guys for listening. God bless you. Until we speak again.